Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Canopy Atlanta event. I'm Floyd Hall, co-founder of Canopy Atlanta. Canopy Atlanta is a community-powered journalism nonprofit organization. And really what Canopy Atlanta does is we center Atlantans in the process of journalism, from assigning stories to telling and presenting those stories in collaboration with established journalists, plus helping residents access information about the issues that matter to them most. Each Canopy Atlanta issue will focus on a different neighborhood in Metro Atlanta. Our first issue focuses on the West End, and West End community members helped us tell these stories. So in addition to our issues, there's also the Canopy Atlanta newsletter, which presents stories and perspectives from across the 5-county core metropolitan area. And with that being said, welcome to what we are entitling the Water Boys panel discussion, moderated by Gavin Godfrey, who you also see on screen. We're going to have some amazing panelists as a part of this dialogue. And really, what's most important is that we try to have a moment where we can just discuss compelling issues, hopefully be respectful, number one, but also just be able to just swap ideas, share issues, share perspectives, and make sure that we're being heard as a community and really lifting up those voices in the community that have something to say. So here's just some backstory. Again, some of the tenets of what Canopy Atlanta really tries to do, which is working with community, both paying and training residents to tell these stories, and then presenting in conversation and in conjunction with the community. So the core of this particular moment that we're having now is centered on one of the stories from this first issue entitled The Water Boys Hustle, which was written by Gavin Godfrey, with photography by Abubakar Kante. So we're going to dive into this particular story, some backstory on the story, but really framing this in a larger conversation about entrepreneurship, Black entrepreneurship, community policing, and just community voices and how those have to come together to create compelling moments like we have right now. We definitely want to thank our sponsors, Best End Brewing Company, Monday Night Brewing Company, Westview Corner Grocery, and Area West Realty. Please support those sponsors as you come across them in your daily walks and drive throughout the Atlanta area. We thank them for their support of Canopy Atlanta and in this moment. I mentioned before, this panel will be moderated by Gavin Godfrey, our panelists, Abubakar Kante, Bane Joyner, Mr. Adasa, and Casey Venning. So with that being said, I want to sort of turn this over to you, Gavin. First of all, to say thank you for both moderating this panel, but also your words and energy in creating and writing this story. And I want to just kind of give you some props for tackling an issue that I think resonates within the Atlanta community, within West End, but within the Atlanta community, the large community, in a variety of ways. So thank you for that, Gavin. And I want to just bring you into this conversation now to just talk about it.
Okay. Can everybody see me and hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, I guess I can just kick it off. I'm also joined here by Abubakar Kante, obviously our photographer for this story, and really just to kick it off, editing this issue was an honor and a pleasure, and I feel like it was something that a lot of the storytellers and journalists in Atlanta felt like we needed to do. But on top of that, when Max Blau, one of the Canopy staffers, approached me about possibly writing this story as well as editing, I was a little nervous and intimidated just simply because I knew it was such a hot button issue in the city. And in a year where there's so many divisive topics, politics, masks, etc., this was one locally that we we're seeing a lot of, people on both sides of the issue, pro water boy, anti water boy, police need to get involved, police don't need to get involved. What's the mayor going to do about it? There was a lot of chatter about this, and it just felt like deep in my bones, it was a story that I had to tackle. And usually kind of my last spirit guide when I need advice to pursue a story is my wife, because she isn't a journalist and she has no bias in the matter. And she was like, you have to do this story. Every time we stop at an exit, at a light, you are always buying water. You're always trying to look out for these boys, but you're always asking questions. You have so many thoughts about this. So it felt like a no-brainer to pursue this. And especially being through the lens of Canopy, there was no better platform to do it on. So, with that said, I mean, just to give y'all a little backstory, I mean, to really zero in what we wanted to do, we saw a lot of people reporting on this, right? AJC, WSB, 11 Alive, Fox 5, everybody was on it, but it was very much like reactionary. It was like, oh my God, the Water Boys did this. This happened. There was this shooting, and there wasn't a lot of voices coming from the Water Boys themselves. So Max and I had talked a lot about potentially just profiling a water boy, me spending as much time as I could trying to really get to know these boys and really see, the world through their eyes. And, it was easier said than done, of course. After that, it was just a process of me driving around to different stoplights and corners and really feeling kind of like a little bit of a stalking kids, trying to see who could be potentially a good source to tell this story. And I went to different stops, Lee Street, Lowry headed east, Lowry headed west. And it was, coming back east when I stopped at Lowry Boulevard and I came across Baby D and his crew. And, these kids were eager and open to chat and talk about their story, and invited me to spend, basically every weekend for about, 5 or 6 weekends. I would go there Saturdays and Sundays and just watch and observe. And so what I hope to just accomplish and get across was just that, these are kids, and everything you've heard about them is true. Everything, they are trying to make better for themselves. But again, there are some instances where some of the kids are, are doing or exhibiting behavior that I think hurts them more than helps them. And, we'll get into all of that. But I wanted to bring Abubakar in because he took some incredible photos. And, part of the big mission of what Canopy wants to do is make sure our fellows in the community that we're covering and also trying to empower the part of this story. And Abubakar from West End grew up here, and he has been just knee deep in a lot of the work that the fellows were doing. But he really wanted to be a part of this story. Abubakar, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How's it going?
Good. Welcome, brother. Welcome. I'm really happy you're here, man.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I feel like you and I kind of sharing what we experienced might help the audience kind of get a sense of what went into reporting this story. I had basically spent, like I said, some weeks with them, but throughout that time I told them, I have a photographer who's going to come out and he wants to photograph you. And I think my kind of first question for you actually is, I remember our staff meetings, and we were, talking about this story and who was asked for as a photographer. You had actually spoken up and wanted to be a part of this story. I'm just curious for you, especially as an aspiring journalist and storyteller, what was it about this story that drew you to want to be a part of it? What about the topic and how Canopy could approach it was why you wanted to be the one to take the photos?
Well, like you said, I grew up in the West End, and living here, I've always seen multiple groups of kids selling water, selling chips, basically selling anything that they can at the exits or like the corners. And so like not knowing really much about it, or like even if they were all connected or anything like that, like I guess that kind of definitely sparked my interest into the story for sure, and wanting to learn more about the kids like as like individuals.
Right. Now, you were, like I said, involved in other Canopy stories as well. But in terms of your approach to this one, how is it different? What kind of challenges did this story present to you? Because I know for me, it's at the end of the day, like we're dealing with teenagers. You know, they
Right.
don't owe us their time, they don't owe us their attention, and that's something you really have to fight for often to get information you want. And you're essentially stepping into their world. It's their rules, and so me just having to embrace that. And I wonder for you, especially, it's easier for me, right? Because I can hide in a corner with a notepad and not say anything. But you have a camera; their eyes are always on you. I'm curious, what was your approach in trying to help bring this story to life?
Well, one of the most difficult things about actually photographing this story was, trying to like maintain their, like, I guess, confidentiality, like keeping their identities secret, because that was one of their biggest worries, was they didn't want their faces to be in the actual story, whether it was from, things that they had done in the past, or like things that they are doing, or like maybe, I don't know, shame or embarrassment or something. I don't know, but I definitely would say that like keeping their identities concealed was the most difficult part.
Right, and that was something I was thinking about as well. Was just that sensitivity, right? We didn't want to bring them any trouble or harm, but also we need to tell their stories. And I remember the first day, I told you to get there at a certain time, and you and I kind of just sat there and waited for a while because the boys didn't show up.
Yeah, we were there for a minute.
Yeah, and I remember just thinking, like, is he bored? We're just sitting here, and I hope that there's less glamorous parts of journalism. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. We rush to get over to the Lowry Boulevard exit and the Chevron over there, and we're waiting for Baby D for almost 2 hours, and it's just us kind of shooting the shit. But
Yeah.
I was curious for you. Once the boys did show up and you kind of saw their world unfold, what was something for you that was surprising or new? Because for me, I think it was just the system that they have, whether it's the breakdown of money between each other, the logistics of who gets ice and water, and how the breakdown of labor goes. What to you, I think, or do you think was the kind of eye-opening thing you noticed immediately?
I think that like well, on top of the breakdown of money, that was really interesting how like they all split it amongst each other no matter who like actually makes the sale. I thought that was really cool. But one of the things that really stood out to me, I can't remember which day it was, but when D went to the store to buy 2 cases of water, he paid someone to walk the water back for him, and I thought that was pretty cool because he was like spreading, the wealth. But that definitely was the most interesting part for me.
Right, right. Like you're mentioning how like when they run out of water, they usually pay either a local community person, or it's usually oftentimes a homeless person to
Right.
go up to the Family Dollar and get the ice, get the jugs, and carry it for them. And like you said, they pay them. What I mean? So there's money to go around because they are making $400 in some cases a day.
Right.
Uh, and so in terms of after you've captured the images, right? Because you had the difficulty of shooting their face, and we talked about obviously capturing those exchanges of money and product. But I think one thing that was interesting, I think that we ran into was when I was out there, right? Before we had a photographer, the people, the customers, the residents who drove by were pretty tame for the most part. But then it seemed like a lot of people were stopping, offering advice or scolding the boys. I mean, I even got yelled at. People told me I didn't need to be out there because they thought I was a water boy. But they were telling us that they felt this was a result of you being there, that people saw a news camera or a camera in general and
Right.
felt the need to impart their wisdom however they felt fit. What was your experience just in terms of not just shooting the boys, but the interactions with the people, and how some of those people might have interacted to you capturing that transaction on film?
Well, I could definitely see how like, me being there with the camera, affected how the people like interacted with them, because like there were definitely times where like I was trying to get a shot, and like I'd say definitely a couple of people would like almost pose or like give the money kind of slowly.
Yeah.
And like you said, people pulling over and like giving lectures for like 10 minutes. The one guy with the truck, um, giving them a $50 bill, or like $100 bill. Uh, that probably definitely the camera definitely had an effect on that for sure, I think.
Right, right. And it wasn't always, I guess roses, I should say. There were definitely some tense moments. And I can remember there was one day we were there together and it felt like the boys felt tense. Something either happened. And like I tell people all the time, you don't know what these boys have been through before they got to that corner. You don't know when they leave, where they go to, what they've experienced, the daily life. So, we try not to let it bother us. But there was a different air that day. And I remember I had to leave. And I remember thinking to myself, I need to call Abubakar. And you actually reached out to me first.
Yes.
What happened? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Uh, like you said, there was something in the air that day for sure. And it just seemed like everybody was like on edge, and I guess like an argument broke out between two of them, and then like one of the kids was like, "Oh, you should just leave," to me. And then I did start to leave, but then as I was walking to the car, one of the kids wanted to see like what was on the camera, and like one of the things I never do is I'm not gonna give anyone my camera to like look at it or anything. But they at one point ended up surrounding me and like kind of forcing my hand to delete some of the photographs that I had taken.
Right. And I mean, just for you, I'm willing to bet there were no other experiences similar to that with your Canopy Fellow experience. So what was that like? And had you ever, just in your career as a photographer, experienced anything like that?
No, I hadn't ever experienced anything like that.
Mhm.
So it definitely, I guess that's one I can check off of the books. But
Right.
it just like taught me to be a little bit more careful, a little bit faster when I'm leaving for sure. If it's like a tense situation like that.
Right. Right. And I know for me going into it, um, there's a lot of chatter about, are you safe in these situations with, unpredictable teenagers? And
Right.
I remember thinking within 10 minutes, that thought kind of faded away. That just like any other teenagers, they're going to be unpredictable, but I never felt like my safety was a concern. I always felt like if there was going to be any kind of issue or confrontation, it would always be between, the boys. To them,
Right.
we were just you know.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
trying
And
to
I
make it
can't
a
even say,
whole- Go ahead.
and I can't even say that it was the our initial guys. It was guys that I had never seen before that popped up.
Right, right, and
Yeah.
that we learned that tends to happen, right? That
Right.
um, there's a sense of not even territory with those corners, but there is a skepticism when a new crew shows up or somebody comes up who's not usually there. And I feel like that's something that organizations around Atlanta and others are trying to work with, like how to keep the boys working together because ultimately they all benefit from this work. So hopefully that's what people can get from our story. And I was hoping from you, what is the biggest thing you learned, storytelling wise? What's kind of the greatest thing you learned from this experience? Because like I said, for me, I think it was, I think for journalism, it's always taking yourself outside of your comfort zone and trying to put yourself in someone's shoes that aren't yours. And I was always throughout the process hoping that you pick up on some instance of that. But I'd love to know what did Abubakar learn in this process?
Well, honestly, I'd feel like I learned somewhat the same thing, like as far as taking myself out of my comfort zone, um, and learning how to like talk to a subject more to better photograph them.
Mm-hmm.
Because being there those, couple of days that I was out there with them, I definitely learned a lot more about each individual and like kind of it. I don't know. It might be weird, but it kind of like made me see them different, like even through the camera.
Right, right, right. And were there anything, afterwards? It's like we work on the story, we get so involved, and you sometimes just need to take a step back. Well, did you have moments like that when you were photographing, right? And maybe afterward you were back home editing those photos, anything that kind of hit you or any realizations that came to mind after the fact when you were no longer with them, but kind of sorting through those images? Because I feel like your images really paint a full spectrum of what their day is like and what goes into their work. But I'm curious what struck you after the fact when you were working on it.
I think what struck me the most was like a coming to the realization that like how these are kids, like they're really young, and I'd say all of them, like, well, a couple of them definitely had tattoos, some of them more than me, so like it's like whoa, they they're they've definitely probably been through some things.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And did you, to your point about just feeling like you knew them? I remember after we were done, I continued to drive to Lowry and look for them. And true to Baby D's word, I think he closed up the shop and packed it up for the winter. But I know they'll be back out there, and I wonder, if we should do a follow up in the future and see
Yeah, definitely.
see where they are now. I do believe, I think that we have time for a little more combo before we bring in our panelists. But I was wondering if you had any questions for me, or just any observations that you noticed about the process that you were curious about.
I do actually. What made you stick with the initial guys that we started with
So
instead of moving on to like another group?
right, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's part of it was Max and I, who was my editor on this. We talked about, would it be good to follow a crew, or would it really be good to zero in on one kid? And I think after spending a couple of days with him, I realized that Baby D had kind of, as you saw, it was more of the leader. He's very quiet,
Hmm.
leads by
Yeah, definitely.
example. When that fight broke out that you mentioned, Baby D was the one at the center of it, trying to break it up and then encouraging you to come back the next day and
Right.
still document. He didn't want that to keep us from reporting, which I really appreciated. So there was just, like you said, it's like once you talk to them and get to know them individually, it was just a connection. And Baby D was always open. He as open as they could be, right? We don't know
Right. Yeah, as
their
open as
real
they could
names.
be.
You try to ask for a cell phone number. Oh, my cell phone's broken, but it's totally fine to play Little Baby all day. But the cell phone works in some cases, but maybe not that. And so you learn what the limits are, and you every now and then you come back to them and try to and push them, but you stick to the story. And the story was trying to put myself in the shoes of a young water boy, and Baby D was willing to let us do that and be there. And so I wanted to really kind of zero in on him and kind of the rotating supporting cast of characters that are around him. But I know you saw that was kind of Baby D's world.
Yeah,
He,
definitely.
he definitely is the quiet leader, which is interesting because he's also one of the smallest out of all the kids that are there. And I think that just kind of speaks to who he is.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Any questions for me?
Uh, Actually, I think that's it.
No, you're totally good. How's the response to this story been for you?
Oh, it's been amazing. Everyone's been hitting me up saying such a great job that we did. Tons of reposts, retweets on Twitter, and
Yeah.
shares on Instagram. The reception's been awesome.
Yeah, okay. I mean, someone I see in the chat has asked us, do you think the boys would have been as open as they were with us or with any journalists with the mutual trust that they got from us? Do we feel like anybody else maybe could have gotten them to be more open? And I think it's like this person mentioned, you have to build that mutual trust first. I think for a while, especially for us, Canopy was new, so they don't
Right.
know the name Canopy. They've heard of the AJC. They might know of a CNN, but and so it was trying to overcome that too, let them know this is new. But so I would just try to explain to them, we are wanting to focus on policing in the community, and we've heard a lot about the interaction between water boys and police, and we just want to observe ourselves and see. And he was totally fine with that, and the rest of the boys, to a degree, were fine with that. As you said, they just were like, don't shoot our faces. We don't want people to know that we're here, essentially. So yeah, I appreciate that question, Adrian Coleman. But I think you and I might be wrapped up here. I think we might need to bring in our panelists. But
All right.
you crushed it. Austin. You were incredible, and I hope we can do a follow up together.
Thank you so much, man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that, Gavin and Abubakar. Really appreciate that. And for those who maybe didn't catch that, Abubakar is one of our fellows. We both paid and train, these fellows to really dive deep into this work. And it was really important that, we try to create experiences for them that are not just like, they're not like interns. Like these, like we want them to actually do this work and be present in this moment. So I think it was really great that you all were able to work together in that moment. And again, I think the story really came out great. So in this moment now, we're going to start with the sort of group discussion, the panel discussion. And I want to get the screen back up here. That sort of shows the panelists who we have. And we want to thank them for their time and energy in this conversation as well. And I'm going to invite them up onto the stage, so to speak. So just bear with me for a moment as I do that.
I think we have everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and go around. What I want to do to kick this off is I'm just gonna say your names, but I want everybody to go around and introduce yourselves. And can y'all kick us off by just telling us basically why you're here, why this issue is important to you personally, and why you would love to be a part of this conversation. So we have Bame Joyner to my right from Atlanta Influences Everything. Big guy, big good friend of mine from back in the day. We got Mr. Nasa, you know what I'm saying? Super community involved man, West End resident for 15 years. We got Casey Venning from Hey Atlanta, which stands for Helping Empower You. So, people, I'm so glad you are here. This question obviously is to open to all you got, but just like I said, kick us off. Why are you here? Why is this issue of Black youth entrepreneurship, community involvement, crime, policing, why is this important?
Well, I'll start. I'll take the privilege of being the only lady on the panel. It's important to me because the work that Hey does has been happening since 2011, and this particular issue, we kind of got thrust into it. It was one of those things where we literally just stopped like everybody else to say, hey, here's a couple of trash bags, put your mask on, because it was the start of the pandemic, and we kept going back, and I ended up really having 20 young Black men become my surrogate sons. And this issue is important to me because I'm now fully invested in their lives, whether they succeed or not. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but what makes it real for me is even on yesterday when 2 of them were picked up and arrested, and the first call that was made was to me and not to their parents. So for me, I have no choice but to figure out a way through this with them and for them.
Ben?
For me, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Well, I'm from West End, with Thorpe Avenue, and I'm 41. So I just want to kind of put in context. So I guess 1979, 80, when I was living in the West End. I'm currently in Westview, but so one, it's a West End issue, and more specifically, the West End is a neighborhood. When they do the neighborhood shout outs in Atlanta, like Greg Street might do the shout outs. I don't know if you really hear the West End, when people start shouting out Cascade and Camelton and Niski Lake. So the West End is this weird place that from a branding perspective, Atlanta is like native Atlanta is still open and weird on the branding of the West End. There's many stories. So I just wanted to, I was interested in the West End, and then I walk a lot and ride MARTA. So I see the boys, I interacted with them. Might have slipped up and bought a blunt for one or two of them. Yeah, they need a cigarillo. Hey, bro, but I understand. I know them. You know what I'm saying? I know them just by, and I don't know if I've reached unk status yet. So they kind of say,
big bro.
Yeah, and I'm 41, So yeah, I have a different type of interaction with them. I think more so different than Casey, especially because I'm not intentionally I'm not directly trying to help them. Like I just end up with them just kind of on GP of how I move. But because I push for young people to get in creative careers, I look at a lot of them and wonder, looking at my life and my peers, you can see a lot of it is touching up on soft skills and exposure. A lot, not all of them, but soft skills and exposure for a lot of them. And that's an easy fix if the adults were to do the right thing. So I just want us to do better. We talk about them, but we got to do better. So I'm looking more at us. But yeah, I'm here to kind of learn how to do better and learn from y'all and tell whatever I can tell to help. But yeah, I'm glad. And Gavin, the lack of people like your uncle is dying off. Coach Buck Godfrey, Southwest men type of black man, right? And I don't know if that black man like Buck Godfrey and how he's known in DeKalb County, the lack of that type of figure currently existing overall, I think has something to do with it. I did have to throw that in there. But,
yeah. Mr. Odas?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think for me, I get it kind of honestly. My parents, my mother is a minister, and my father and my mother were very involved in the church. And for as long as I've known, we always had kids in and out of our house. We always had kids, and they knew the importance of being mentors and leaders for kids, and they instilled that in me early. The business, the West End Community Business Center, and the community-based organizational development center, which we own as family business, the sole purpose of setting up in the West End was because we saw a need before we see the current transition. That's when we saw a need years ago and said, look, the youth need accessibility to computers, information. I mean, there was a young man once that wanted to get a job at Popeyes, I believe it was, and came and knocked on the door, and he couldn't apply because they no longer took paper. You had to apply online. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have a computer at home. Mm-hmm. So there was no way for him to be able to do it. And we were able to, provide that for him. So the youth have always been important to us, to my family. And so I definitely want to do more, to uplift and bring up the youth in our community.
Well, for all of you, I'm curious, what has been, Casey, before Hay got involved, and Mr. Doss throughout Weston and BAME, as you've already mentioned, what has been y'all's interactions with the Water Boys before you even got involved, before you had this panel? What has been your experience with them? Anybody?
Yeah, for me, prior to this, it literally was, I live on the West Side, right? What I love about even just everybody on this panel, we're not folks who's, driving in from the suburbs trying to figure this thing out, right? We're right here. I'm a product of the AUC, been in Atlanta 22 years, the historic Morris Brown College and all that comes with that. I live on Lowry. So in order for me to get home, I'm passing Water Boys for the last 20 years, right? In any direction I turn, off of MLK, off of Boone, right? AKA Simpson, coming down Lowry, Ashby, it does not matter. I'm seeing them. And so it was not new to me. The reason we stopped was simply because of the pandemic, and we wanted them to be safe and healthy as much as possible. But it wasn't what is this? Let me stop and see what's going on. I had been given dollars and tens and, look, get out the street, young man, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to hit you, but I need you to kind of hurry up. That's been the last 20 years. This ain't new. So for me, the interaction had already been happening. Some of these young men, we had already engaged in some level and didn't know it until they put the pieces together, just because of the work that we've been doing in Atlanta public schools and around the community, or knowing counselors and working with their aunts in schools. So for us, when we kind of got thrown into it, it just felt like a natural fit. But this wasn't new to us. We had already known why, to some degree. We've learned a lot more, but why they were out there. And that this wasn't new. So for the city to act like we don't know where this came from, I'm gonna need you to kind of be a little bit more truthful.
I see them every day. I see them every day, and sometimes it can be a little off-putting because you, as an older member of the community, I feel like there's a teddy bear inside every gangster. You know what I'm saying? And it's just the way that you bring that about is how you approach that gangster, and I'm not mad at them for getting money out there. It's hard times. Some of them may only be providing the only money that their household will see, so it's necessary. But you want to, when you have the opportunity, roll down the window and say, hey, brother, don't try not to stand right in the middle of the street. When you're done, make sure you pick up all your trash. Like, it's how you say it. You know what I'm saying? You can run into an issue if you come with an attitude, an elitist attitude that, you're better than these young men. And I would much rather see them doing this than so many other things that they could be doing. And if you are not aware, with the pandemic happening, crime is going up. Crime is going up. Opportunities are fewer. And so we need to encourage any type of entrepreneurial pursuit like this when it comes to our youth.
Right. And something that all three of you just mentioned is that for a lot of us, especially Atlanta residents, this isn't new. We've seen these boys. There's been different iterations. It might be water. It might be candy. But at the heart of it is young Black men trying to provide for themselves, and as you mentioned, Mr. Adasa, sometimes their family as well. But why did it feel like this year in particular that all of a sudden this was the hot button issue to the extent that, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms had to form an advisory council to address it. What happened? You know what I mean? If this is nothing new for a lot of us, why was this year so different? What happened? Why did the water boys become such a hot topic?
The pandemic happened, and then school got shut down, and then I can't hear you. Pandemic happened, school shut down on March 13th, and it was like, yo, go for what you know. And to your earlier point about some of them making money and the only money that's coming into the household, they saw it as an opportunity to make more money. Now I have more time to be out on the streets. Because let's be honest, APS, not an anomaly, but a lot of schools didn't get it all the way together when they first sent these kids home to do digital learning. There was a lot of learning to do. Nobody expects a pandemic, right? So no fault there. But the reality is that we have to be honest that the children, because they're children, right? They're youth, they're teenagers, but they're children in a lot of sense. They were left to their own devices because these particular Black young men that we're working with don't have a middle class family to find other alternatives to keep them engaged during the day, because their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles are out still trying to make money if their jobs weren't shut down. And because of George Floyd, because of everything else that was happening with the civil unrest and all of the protests happening in the city, these young men put their genius to the pavement. It was like, yo, y'all got 10,000 people down at Centennial Olympic Park, up and down in front of Phillips Arena. We going out there with our cases of water because you thirsty. You've been marching for our rights all day, all night. And they were paying them $10 a bottle. Like, one of my young men will tell you quick, the reason why he's still in it is because he's chasing that $1,200 day that he made just that one day of the protest, because people were giving $20, $50, $100, $2 for a bottle of water because they met a demand because of the pandemic, because of the protests that were happening. But really, the reason the cities paid attention, because the pandemic hit and we had no solutions for poor people. And these children were the beneficiaries of a system that had already been broken, and they've already been raising themselves. They found a way to make some money. And then now, instead of you seeing a couple here and there, now you got 500 to 600, 700 of them all across this city because there was nothing else for them to do. And we make decisions out of the comfort of us making it, not realizing there's still some people struggling just to get by.
Right.
And I believe that the time is long past for us to be waiting for the government to come up with our solutions. We've got to get out of that mindset. It's great that they want to do a task force or whatever it is they want to do, but we need more community-based organizations that deal firsthand with children and families that are in need, people that truly care. And we need to build up those organizations. It's time for us to get involved. I mean, we're going through, you call it gentrification. We're going through a transition right here in the West End right now. And people are feeling displaced. They're feeling pushed out. They're feeling not included. And so we don't want to turn around and complain about the problem. We want to be proactive and address issues within the community before it gets to a point where the government feels the need to get involved, because generally they're so out of touch with what's happening in the community that they can't address it properly. So we need to do more of this, do more community-based involvement.
Right.
And let me say something about the task force.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Bain remembers this or some stuff trickled down. Look, y'all will learn about me. I say what it is. If I get in trouble, I get in trouble, and I've been in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So when this first started happening, I was doing a lot of Facebook Lives, and I was calling out a lot of people, right? Because I couldn't get any answers. And it took me 4 weeks to figure out who was over the task force, right? This task force that was happening, nobody could give me a direct point of contact. What are you working on? Who is at the table? I'm like, because if all y'all have is folks who are making six figures, making decisions at the table, but you don't have community leaders, you don't have education leaders, you don't have police, you don't have families or these young people, then I don't really know if we're going to find a viable solution when it comes down. And after the task force gave their recommendations, that has been almost 3.5 months ago now, and we have yet to see anything come from it. To Mr. Adasa's point, why not fund organizations that have already proven a track record, been on the ground doing this work, instead of giving us the excuse that, oh, we're in a pandemic, we have to be mindful of how much we can do. Lives don't stop because a pandemic happened. And I mean, a couple of weeks ago, there was 300 young people in Atlantic Station. If that is not an example of us needing to figure out our ish and find something for them to do, then I don't know what is. But I mean, as much as I respect the people on the task force, and there's folks I know personally, I need the task force to also do better. And I need for them to also be held accountable. And I'm right at the front of the line. I'm happy to do so about what is going to now manifest from what was just put on a piece of paper in black and white.
Right. Well, to jump in real quick, someone wanted a little bit of an explainer on the task force, and just to bring people up to speed. Essentially, as Casey mentioned, that the task force was, for lack of a better word, tasked with trying to find solutions of ways to possibly, transfer the entrepreneurial spirit and energy of the boys into something technically more legal, because we can get this in a second. They are in violation of city ordinances between being in the street, selling without a license. Technically, they are breaking a law. So this task force, comprised of different residents, business owners, were tasked with trying to come up with solutions that could try to move this forward. So we're not just having these same conversations. And as we're learning, there were mixed results. They came up with 13 recommendations. But one thing, and it kind of brings us back to the topic of, while we're here, was one thing that they did find in speaking to APD was that APD didn't really feel like they should be the ones to address this issue, and that the policing of the water boys wasn't something that they necessarily felt like they should lead the charge in. And I think that was a big issue with this topic over the summer, because there were definitely instances where police were excessive and locking boys up. I spoke to some of the boys who say they show up and will, empty out coolers and take their water and confiscate it. And, when we reached out to APD, obviously they, told us that they weren't aware of such practices. So I'm curious, from all three of you, do you feel like you get that sense that maybe these boys were being targeted or over policed?
Of course.
I think, yeah. Oh, well, not at first, you know what I'm saying? It kind of, it went in waves. And most definitely, I'm from the West End, but I went to school in Buckhead. I know Buckhead very well. So like, once I saw it start going past 17th, it's like, and it just became levels. The same street corners in the West End, like Lowry, like when Lowry was Ashby, it wasn't young boys standing on the corner. It was the old squeegee guy. And respect to the old squeegee. I don't want to not downplay the old squeegee guy, but old Atlanta, like the squeegee and the water be dirty. And like you get off the expressway, they doing all windows, MARTA bus windows. They can get on the thing, they finna squeegee. But that person is gone. And in the corner was kind of empty a little bit, maybe. The while I need beer sign guy, he would show his face. He had twins, obviously. So while I need beer, kind of around, right? And then during this time, the water boys were actually on the little league football kind of hustle. Like It wasn't even water. It was like, yo, I got, my team trying to get to the playoffs. A dude done approached me after the Super Bowl talking about, I'm like, damn, how y'all playing in the pros done stop playing? I thought it go little league, then the pro. Like, so the hustle has changed and taken on many forms. And they're all innovative forms, because even the little league hustle came from a legitimate little league hustle at first, kind of Krispy Kreme donuts with the little helmet with the parents, and maybe even the car wash. And then it just kind of modified itself after a while. So the hustles start off with well thought out intentions of things that make sense, that people seem to need or seem to give to. It gets layered, and who you can see is the Johnny come latelys to the hustle a lot of times tend to be the problem. The later person, he ain't got the memo all the way. He out there playing, but and I do have a question though, in terms of this being the Water Boys. And I know I come from Camp Best Friends Atlanta, Dream Jamboree Atlanta. There were things for us. And then the summer job is gone, like that little cart pushing job at Kroger that all us used to get, a little bag of real quick, little summer real quick. That's gone. It's been gone. I am wondering, Casey, maybe Mr. Adasa, if it's the Water Boys and there's an age group, but is there a reason why it's just boys? And where are the
young ladies?
And why they are not water girls? And where are the girls? Like, why is it just boys?
Can I say something real quick in regards to, and I want to come back to that, but I want to address the issue with the police. We know that within our community, we have a very contentious relationship with the police. It's existed before any of us were even around. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I'm not crazy about the police, So to say whether or not these children have been targeted, I would say, of course, whenever you get, large groups of individuals, in particular, large groups of Black men, yes. What I've always felt, even with not wanting, there's some people in the community that don't want nothing to do with police officers. But if police officers want to be accepted, then we need them to be more proactive and not reactive. And how that happens is by having liaisons within the community, such as the individuals here, that say, look, why don't you put together some programs? You spend enough money on programs to arrest and to jail individuals. Why do we not have someone working within the community to say, look, sheriff's department setting up a little thing over here for the youth for today. And that's what we need more of. We need them to be more involved in the community, more so than just, when someone's getting in trouble, when someone is arrested, or when someone's doing something that's supposedly illegal. And in order to make that happen, because of that divide, we are going to need individuals that don't have a problem going to the police department and saying, look, we need programs that address the issue. As far as the question that you asked, I've seen young ladies out there, but it is an aggressive hustle. So I've seen there's an adult woman right at the corner of Lowry and I think Oak or whatever. She's out there, she's got her juice and her water. So they do get involved, but it is an aggressive hustle. So if you don't have that thing, you're not gonna make it out there. You're not gonna make it out.
And it's not just that, because that is definitely like reason number one. The other reason is part of what we're talking about with the police. Our Black boys are intimidating. So for the job opportunities they may have, they don't get. especially for those who may have been kicked out of school, don't have a good command of the, English grammar and language and all of that, don't understand eye contact, don't have a firm handshake, because we can keep unraveling this thing. Who is it that's teaching them that in their communities, right? And girls have an easier way to make money, right? You don't see most boys braiding hair, right? You don't see most boys figuring out how to do acrylic nails. And so girls are going to find a different kind of hustle that's not going to get them out on the streets because it is so aggressive. Now, and I have seen young ladies as well, but it's overwhelmingly boys because they really don't have as many options as the girls do. And when I make this argument, people's like, well, they could be cutting grass. I'm like, they could, but a lot of us don't even want them to come cut grass unless you got 5 adults standing around because you scared they're going to bust you upside your head or take something out your house. So you don't even let them cut your grass, take your trash out anymore, right? So when you leave them with no options, they're going to do the best with what they have.
Right.
And I did want to say, Gavin, so, a lot of we went to some of the police. Now, like, let's keep it real, Atlanta. Like, we got the weird police kind of like everybody else, and then we got like real Atlanta police where that's your partner. Them, he just became the police. He might be lame, but he's not really lame. He cool. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to them. We still talk a lot, and at times there's a generational gap in leadership at the police department, right? And the things that the police want to do versus what they have to do per, what the upper brass has said. But those of us that really walk or know street life, I'm not a street guy, but I understand street. I know how to maneuver in the streets. And at the same time, I have had encounters, not necessarily with water boys, but teenagers. You see it's real out here in these streets. You know what I'm saying? And you can think you dealing with a water boy on some, what was in Gremlins? What was it, a Mogwai? Yeah. Like the little Grim, he was nice. Yeah. Gizmo. You done tried to Gizmo the little water boy. And then you put some water on the water boy. Now you're a gremlin. Now I got to do you, young man, because I'm not finna play no games with you, bro. I got kids, and you're not finna take me from my kids, so I got to take you out. And just keeping it fully transparent, that is also what the grown street black men are saying as well. Like, bro, I will kill you, bro. You think it's a game? Okay, I will kill you, young man. Or he done ran, the young man done ran to felon like Ving Rhames, that they out here, man. And so there has to be an understanding of all sides that these are younger versions of us, good, bad, and ugly, and how we deal with younger versions of us. But you can let up and be too nice and be done found yourself a victim, right? Let's not. And that's the weird part that comes with community engagement, like people that fight for the community all the time, right? That I learned when I was working at CCI, is people always fighting for the community. But what's interesting is a lot of them folks fighting for the community, like it's a balance, because it's almost like you need to be robbed by the community first to fully understand how to help the community. And if you ain't really dealt with the community in a negative manner, for real.
And I know, Bane, you maybe have some audio.
You don't even know how to.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that last point
is
where I have this really kind of friction with these funders in Atlanta. Full transparency, in 15-year nonprofit professional, I have worked at some of the biggest nonprofits here in Atlanta. I'm talking 100 million plus annual operating budgets. Okay. And the idea that you have folks who are making decisions about funding programs and initiatives who don't know the struggle and who don't want to hear from people who know the struggle is why you get organizations and programs that consistently get funding and you still see no impact. So if, you know, no shade, but Boys and Girls Club headquartered here in Atlanta, right? We've got YMCA, we have Girls Inc., we got Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and you mean to tell me you still have a failing rate in APS, especially of Black and brown children, with all of these youth serving organizations, and we can't figure out how to get them what they need for them to be successful. But then you have organizations like mine and like plenty of others that are on the ground who can tell you for real, look, this program that you got, you want them to come sit in a workshop for 2 hours and put their khakis on and their polo shirt, and they'll play the game for a little bit until you piss them off and they cuss you out and then you put them out. I'm the one who deals with them, because then I'm gonna let you have your moment, go over there, cuss me out in the corner, because you ain't gonna cuss me out in my face. But after you have a moment, we're gonna figure out how do we pick the pieces back up and keep moving. And that is the work that it's going to take to see the difference of these young people taking their natural entrepreneurial skills, understanding that they have to pivot a little bit. They have to understand how to use those rough edges to their benefit, know when to polish them a little bit, know when they need to just let them be jagged. But that requires people being in the game with them. And again, I've run some of the best programs here in Atlanta. I've worked with some of the brightest when it comes to youth entrepreneurship, development, leadership across this country. And what we get wrong every single time is thinking that if you're going to bring them to a building, you've already missed the mark. You have got to take the programming to them, and then you've got to let them help you write it along the way, because this little program in a box stuff, it ain't working. And we see our kids still dropping out of school, failing. Let's not even talk about the fact that they don't even go to school on Wednesdays no more, but whatever. So they already failing, they're dropping out of school. They're paying the rent for most of their families. If they don't come in the house with cash, they can't sleep. If they don't bring money in, their little brothers and their little sisters are not going to eat. And it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm not worried about school or being respectful to you when I don't know where I'm going to sleep at the night, or if I'm going to eat tomorrow. And we cannot continue to think that just pretty packaged youth programming is going to solve this problem. What's going to solve this problem is being able to get in their face, check them when they are wrong, let them know, rock with you even when you are disrespectful. When the police get you, they're gonna come get you. I'm gonna get you together, but we're gonna get a plan to move forward. And let me check your mama in the process too. That is what it's going to take for you to see the difference. We can't keep doing this program in a box, or we're gonna see the same problem in the next years.
Right. Well said. And that leads me to, I wanted to get to a question that someone posed in here, but I think we addressed it, which is, you know, how do the Water Boys feel about possibly having to cede some of that, you know, entrepreneurial control? And when I spoke to the boys, you know, Baby D and them, the issue was like, no, I don't want to cede any of this control. I get to set my own hours. I make my own rules. You know, they, as you've mentioned, Casey, people have approached me about possibly working in a stockroom here or working at Waffle House. You know, I make $30 an hour out here doing this. And so I think, go ahead, Mr. Adolfo.
We can't be afraid of educating and informing, though, that there is ways to do things. Like when, you know, we have the West End Community Business Center. It is really that truly a business center. You come in, you know how many people come in and they want to open a chicken shack, or they want to open, but they skip 3 or 4 steps. They don't want to be in compliance. You know, they don't, you know, the things that are necessary so that you actually exist, you know. And so I don't think when it comes to these youth, we should be afraid of saying, look, there's nothing wrong with trying to hold on to as much ownership and as much money as you can. But this is how we can do it. You know how impressed those children would be if we would provide them with a plan, a business plan to say, okay, what are we going to do with once we get enough money from this water? Where are we taking it to the next level? How are we going to take it to the next level? And you'd be surprised on the response that you may get. Teach them about licensing. Teach them about incorporation, teach them about Secretary of State, all those necessary things to run a viable business. We should not be afraid to approach the youth with those kind of options, so they know that there's a right way to go about doing this. There's a gentleman, real quick. There's a gentleman on MLK. He's killing it. I know y'all saw this young brother. He's got the whole setup. I mean, he got chips, drinks, water.
Yep.
He's going somewhere. You know what I'm saying? He's going somewhere. And so we should encourage them that what you're doing is not a bad thing, but this is how we're going to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And that is part of what we have been doing. And so when I mean that cookie cutter, what I mean is that people who have these very well thought out and impactful and effective programs that work with young people who have support, right? They can show up at a scheduled workshop time and sit down and listen and get those things together. But even for the young men that I work with, like the way that we do youth programming is so out of the box, right? Like I literally get check-in calls from them every single morning. Miss Casey, what's the move? I have school today, but this what time I get out? I need to go and I need to order first. I need to get my vinyl. We have a business plan. We're working through. You can no longer give Miss Casey cash to go get what you need because you need bank accounts. Let's talk about how do you get a bank account. If you're under 18 and you can't get one because your parents have a credit issue, let's rock with these reloadable cards right now. Are you managing your expenses and what your profit margin is? We're doing all of that, but my boys are never going to sit in the classroom. And until we can get folks who can come to them, walk them through the process, go to the warehouse with them, knock on the door to their daddy and say, look, get in the car with me. Let's go to the bank together to make sure this gets done. It's not going to happen for most of these boys if we're waiting to get them ready to bring them someplace. And my fight is that, look, we're out here at this point scrambling, trying to keep these 15 to 20 boys afloat, right? And in the process of them working through their business plan, we've got to incentivize it though, and we've got to pay them along the way, because I can tell you 8 of them right now that if they don't bring money home, their whole family is on the street. So we can't wait until the business plan gets executed and wait 6 months for the profit to come. We've got to be able to incentivize the program along the way, pay them as they go through the modules, pay them as they check off their goals, so that when they get to the place where their business is making profit, they now know how to best manage it. But again, it requires us thinking differently about how we show up for our youth. And we have to understand that the kids we're talking about tonight, you don't have to pay them for their time. They know enough hustle. They are entrepreneurial, so much to the point, already in CEO status. For those of us who are consultants, we don't let you pick our brain. Unless you pay my consulting fee, I'm not giving you my goods. They don't know that yet. They know the action, but not the principle. So they're going to make you pay them for their time. But in the process, what are you giving them so that when the program is over, you can say, you know what, if you make it, great. If you don't, it's not because you weren't given the tools. So we have to, again, figure out how do we take it to them and who's going to walk with them through the process. But again, this idea of we got this schedule and you got to come and sit through these classes, we're going to miss a whole lot of them.
Right.
Good question.
So I have to say that, you know, other cities have, I don't know what young Black boys are doing in other cities. Other cities have obviously young Black teenage boys. Atlanta has to understand that we play around with this. We love to try to sell the Maynard Jackson narrative like he was the rule, not the exception. But now we know later he was the exception, not the rule. We have to own who we are in Atlanta. Like, this ain't East St. Louis, yo, or Gary, Indiana, or Detroit. No disrespect, Flint. Like, no disrespect nobody from them places, but we love to uplift that we are this Black Mecca and all of that. So it's interesting that in some of these other cities, the Tesla and the Wraith and the Bentley Bentiaga, these are like white people cars, right? Still, you see what I'm saying? But in Atlanta, it's tough for a poor Black person if you're struggling, because you start to see people that look like you having things, man. You know what I'm saying? So these boys, they're not gonna play this helpless role. Like I'm not in some backwoods town, man. I'm in Atlanta. Like, you got to treat me like I'm somebody. And I might, when you see a lot of stuff happening around you, Tyler Perry and the verses with Jeezy and Gucci, Stacey Abrams came, like, it's folks making moves. Lil Baby and 4PF is like, West End Mall is like Lil Baby headquarters. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's folks out here doing. So you got to kind of, you got to pay them, because there's folks out here, or at least there's the optics that folks are getting money. You see what I'm saying? And Atlanta City Council, the decision makers, like the Community Foundation, and a lot of the folks in the philanthropic and nonprofit foundation space, if they don't understand how much Atlanta changed on the other end of BMF, then you can't if you don't work at the Community
That's
Foundation,
the problem
you
right
ain't
there.
never heard of BMF.
But you want to invest in Black communities, but you don't know the impact of that.
Come on, shawty. Come on. Man, it's huge. Yo, just look at the verses and see why did so many people tune in. You know what I'm saying? So all of this there's a lot of cultural nuances that Atlanta made the mistake of always focusing on racial representation in terms of Black. Like, we got to have a Black mayor. We got to have Black. And I feel it, except this Atlanta, man, this levels of Black, yo. They say Wakanda, we ain't got one or two types of Black. We got about 8, 9, 10. It's levels of Blackness here, right? And we never focused on having cultural representation. So Atlanta got Black people in City Hall, Black people in organizations, Black people in the foundations, but them Black people, culture, you know what I'm saying? They're culturally removed from the streets, from TikTok, from all that is real out here. And so they are. It's off. It's off, and it's not necessarily a black and white off. It's also a generational and a cultural off. You know what I'm saying? The 300 kids at Atlantic Station, in my opinion, the disconnect between the boomers and X throughout the city, is throughout City Hall, in leadership all across the philanthropic foundations, the amount of that baton handoff between Gen X and the boomers, that fumble, that's, you looking at the results of the fumble. You know what I'm saying? For every action, there's a reaction. And so now we got to deal with some monsters out here, you know, but you got Saucy, you got folks out here doing the work. There's a disconnect in how they receive the money. It's just there's an old guard disconnect. And then you quickly try to rush it, give it to the young hot person, but they haven't lived long enough. They don't have the life experience. So there's just a lot of fumbles, you know what I'm saying? And we got to get it together quickly, because Atlanta doesn't seem to be waiting on, they're not waiting on this. The World Cup is coming. The city is growing. The city is moving. And my last point in that is the Metro Atlanta Chamber, right? And Invest Atlanta. When you look at the great people that work at these organizations, great people, good friends, if they're good people at City Hall, I ain't got no problem with you. Like, at the end of the day, though, I found out from a former intern of mine, out of the whole Metro Atlanta Chamber, there were 2 people in the building that came. So what you're starting to see is Atlanta moving in a direction where the ilk that these boys come from, they have no representation. Like, that's why I kind of move how I move, to try to give them some sort of representation, because there's nobody speaking for your best interest at Invest Atlanta, at the chamber. And it's not personal. It's just at least a decade worth of fumbling and ball. I don't want to say the Falcons. I ain't gonna make no Falcons jokes, but fumbling and doing stuff. Right. We haven't gotten it right.
One thing I wanted to address, and it's a question that we have in the chat. You know, and I think we should kind of shift to start answering some questions from folks in our audience as well, because people are very, very active and they have some questions. But obviously, one of the reasons that was very obvious why this became an issue this year was violence. We can't ignore the fact that tactics by some of the boys can be aggressive. And as we mentioned earlier in my conversation with Boubacar, confrontations happen. You know, this earlier this morning, I spoke with Tamika Pletz, whose son Jelani was killed earlier this summer over a dispute, probably involving the bust down. You know, the process of splitting money or lack thereof between the boys. And so, it's a reality that not only do these boys maybe need guidance, you know, in the entrepreneurial space, but what can we do as a community to keep them from hurting each other? Because the more that continues to happen, the less money will be made. And all this positivity we're talking about will go out the door. You know, what do you tell those parents who have had to suffer through this, or just community members who feel like, you know, the safety of the boys is kind of touched on, but it's not really being addressed? How do you guys, especially, you know, Casey, when you're working with them, trying to hopefully coach them on how to approach it or just work with each other, what can we do to really protect them?
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned Jelani's mother. You know, my boys, let me be very careful. My boys live in the neighborhood that Jelani lived in. And so when I dropped them off at home one day, I met her in the gas station. And she was very upset when she saw me with them. And I allowed her to have her moment. And she literally looked at me and she said, "Why are you even trying? They're not worth it." And my response to her was, I don't want what happened to your son to happen to anybody else. So that means somebody has to be involved with the young men who are on the street. Because if we leave it to them, what happened to Jelani is going to happen another week and another week and another week. And the conversation that we have with our boys has always been very transparent. The work that we did, we talked about AJC, WSB TV, Fox. Hay has been on all of that. And we showed them not only the clips where they featured us, but let me tell you what these folks are saying about y'all in these streets, right? And we would sit down and we would watch the clips. I'd make them read the news articles. How do you feel about this? What does this say about what you need to change about your behavior? So instead of me saying, don't do this, don't do that, because my team, we literally stacked on the corner with folding chairs, bull horns, you know, orange vests, the lights changing, get out the street. Oh, y'all got some attention. Two of y'all go over here. We did that for like 6 weeks in the sun, in the summertime, right? And realized they're not going to process me just telling you this isn't dangerous. I need you to see it for yourself. And when we began to show them, they began to make a different type of decision. I would have some of my boys say, "Miss Casey, you know what? It's too many of us out here," because they know my favorite mantra is, "It's 5, let's go." And what they know is when it's 5 or more, stuff gets hot. It get hot between them, right? The competition, it gets too much. So they'll call me, "Miss Casey, it's 5. I'm out. You know, I'm headed home. I'm going to another strip," whatever it is. But because we showed them what people thought about them, they began to make a different choice for themselves and they began to self-manage. So when you pass Boone and North Side right there where Ivan Allen meets, right? Those are my boys. That's the block that we adopted. But now when you see other people, it's other folks have attached themselves to that. My boys know, oh, it's 5 of us. Let me get gone. Let me find my way out of this, because I don't want to add to the narrative of people thinking that all of us are violent. And that has always been my thing. There have been some very horrendous acts. Like, I'll make no bones about it. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't find a way to hide from it. But it's not all of them. And when you are walking with them it makes a difference, because now I get text messages from them. Oh, somebody stopped and said, "Are you Miss Casey's boys?" And we said yes. And it's like, oh, well, we're glad because you seem to be a little bit more respectful now, right? You seem to not approach us so much. They know no more than 2 to the car. Don't put your hands inside the car. If somebody already got it, back up. If it gets down to it, we will pay you out at the end of the day if you didn't make anything. That's what I mean about doing things different. The violence comes because of the competition. And when you eliminate the competition, the violence comes down. So my boys know, in order for me to stay in this HAY program, let me find my way out of this violent situation. Miss Casey, I didn't make anything today because it was more than 5. They was acting however they were acting. Let me cash out you $20. Let me pay you out for the day. Go on about your business. And that is why that corner saw a lot of the foolishness go down, because we found ways to engage them where they could then self-manage so that they weren't involved in the violence.
Right. And, you know, one thing I spoke about with Ms. Pless is, you know, I know she doesn't feel that we don't need to be investing and spending time with these boys. Actually, I know she feels quite the opposite. But I know that in talking with her and other parents and other concerned, you know, residents, is no matter what the job is, whether it's police, everybody, there's a term that we all use called bad apples, right? There's gonna be some in every group. I spend time with these boys. There are definitely boys who come there who have no desire to sell water. They want to hang out. They see other boys like them. Sure, there's some money involved, but they're not necessarily, you know, in the same mind frame as your boys. And, you know,
yeah,
for us, 700 of these boys out here every day, and there's not a program to be there for each and every one of them. So I think that's something to bring up. Mr. Adams, go ahead.
Real quick, because the one thing that we love to do is we love to talk. We love to get together and talk. We love talking. But I commend Miss Casey and you encourage me. And what we need more of that. We need more individuals that are willing to go down in the dirt and get involved. Hey, if you see a group, you know, and if you have the means, bring them something. You know what I'm saying? Bring them something to eat. Bring them something. They're out there, it's hot, it's cold. Bring them something. That's the only way. You go and stand on the corner with them, maybe sell a couple bottles before the police come to the corner. So they don't have the idea in their head that every adult is against what it is that they're trying to do. And they're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to provide something for their families. We need more community engagement. And that's the only way that you can suppress the idea that violence eventually is going to, you know, Ms. Casey brought order to a situation. You know what I'm saying? That is wisdom. That's what adults owe these children. You know what I'm saying? So myself included, I need to do more. And I think that would definitely have an impact on, you know, the violence that we're seeing.
Right.
Yo, and Gavin, I'll say that I identify as a creative because I knew I didn't want to follow a lot of rules. And not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. School systems, they've just failed. Like, I mean, you can slang names, right? And sell. There are a million digital hustles. You got to get the digital. So we got to correct the digital divide. But then you can, and I don't even mean the scamming because they call it Scamlanta now. So they moving from water to another, you know, everything changes. But when I say the lack of cultural hustle or the lack of cultural leadership, the chat room is active. And the chat room is, you know, Harlem built the Renaissance where, you know, you would have these debates and it's like steel sharpens steel. So I think we have a right to disagree with one another. But in the midst of our disagreeing, somebody still got to do the work. So Absolutely. You might approach it one way, this person approach it another. I'm gonna talk the way you look to represent Atlanta. It don't matter whether they did it or they doing it or not. When Olympics, that's who the outside people dealing with. So these folks could be failing us, but a lot of us as community members aren't in position to talk to Nike when they come in the market. They're not finna talk to you. You see what I'm saying? So somebody got to be there to kind of protect the brand, protect what Atlanta is. You know what I'm saying? And there is no cultural representation to protect the fact that folks in London try to dress like these water boys. You see what I'm saying? That the look of the water boys is cool in other places, but there's nobody in leadership that understands culture. You see what I'm saying? To understand that there's capital. So you out here selling water, but your social capital and your look got a barcode on it. You see what I'm saying? So somebody has to understand how to leverage social capital, cultural capital. And I'm aggressive on the situation. One, this is the West End issue. And so anybody in the chat room that disagree with me and not from the West End, hey, I'm from the West End. It's the West End issue, shawty. So I'm gonna say what I want to say. Like, I'm not from East Lake. Yeah, I'm from the West End. It's the West End issue. But I pardon my language. I fuck with you though. Real A-Town. You know what I mean? But this is the West End issue. If we gonna talk West End, this A-Trap Brown, bro. This Imam El Amin. You see what I'm saying? This the Bashir. This City of Atlanta Dolphins swim team. You see what I'm saying? This Camp Best Friends all day. So what I'm saying is, what I realized when I say the baton was dropped is a lot of the disagreement on approach. Now that they don't seem to be as much between X and Boomer, but now we got a lot of Gen X folks arguing at one another. You see what I'm saying? On how to fix the problem. And it's beautiful on one end because at least the leaders, it's our time because we Gen X. You see what I'm saying? At least we are talking and communicating, but what we got to be doing as well. So I could disagree with you, and you could disagree with me while we are doing. You see what I'm saying? Some sort of positive movement. But I saw Tanae on here. Yo, we got to get the money out, bypass a lot of whatever nuances that it takes to get money. Yes, the organizations do need to be held to some sort of standard, right? But the Red Dogs was created, I hate to use them in this conversation, but anybody know the Red Dogs, they were created, couldn't handle the way the Dope Boys was moving. The Dope Boys was moving more aggressive than the regular police. So you got to create a special squad. So this is the special squad time, except it's not the police, it's the community, but the community is empowered by the system. If you don't want something to go wrong in another way. So let's get ahead of the problem. And let's not even call it a problem. Let's get ahead of the issue or the situation, right? To keep things from where they could go. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and everybody on the call, I think y'all are doing more work than me. My role is to support Canopy, Mr. Adasa, the community center, and Casey, and kind of connect the dots. But I can't allow brands to come in the market and use Atlanta culture. Cool, Atlanta culture, cool. So it's weird to have the boys struggling, but yet the way they look and how they move and how they talk is actually being sold and it's cool somewhere else. So that's kind of my job, to maneuver that space and to support those that are already like really doing the work. And I appreciate y'all. I really do, yo. Thank you.
Right. Mr.
Someone made a really, really good point in the chat. And forgive me if maybe this already happened, but they suggested that Coca-Cola. You know, Coca-Cola makes Dasani. A lot of the water that the kids are selling is Dasani. You know, I'm not saying that we force their hand, but Coca-Cola is right here. You know, how can they get involved? How maybe we have someone that's inside of the corporation that deals with community development, community involvement, and how can they get involved? You know, if I was at Coke, I would want to, knowing that these children are out here selling our products on the street. So I just thought that was a great point. We need to start maybe having some of these other organizations get involved along with us in the community and not sit back and wait for the city council or the mayor to do anything about it.
Yo, Coca-Cola actually said the same thing. They are aware. a lot of leadership issues just across the board. And so Coke, they don't know, they need to talk directly to Casey. The problem is Coke would say, well, you know, maybe we need to talk to the Atlanta Committee for Progress. Because when you look at the mission statement, when you look at who's a part of the Atlanta Committee for Progress, first of all, look at the name, right? So let's just hold you accountable by your name. And then look at the mission statement. And then look at who the members are, right? So Coca-Cola, like, well, it only makes sense. They doing the work, except for they not doing the work, though. The disconnect is Coca-Cola's inability to talk to Casey and Chuck Barlow. You know what I'm saying? That and so in my role, and I've been able to circumvent certain things because Atlanta Influences Everything has some sort of cultural capital that we can use to pull Coke in the room. And I'm blessed to have been able to be a part of this. So the brands, I'm a marketing brand guy. The brands on the other end of George Floyd and these uncertain times or whatever you want to call it, right? They at least they say they want to do something, but it's the way the city is set up from a leadership, it's blocking. They're not able to talk. There's miscommunication. And so there just needs to be more of these, Max. You know what I'm saying? There need to be more of these, y'all.
Right. Well, I just lastly to kind of close out with y'all. I mean, like we're saying, the boys are a lot of them. I mean, they've been out there still, but it's getting colder. A lot of them are going to close up shop, and they're going to be back out there come spring, come summer. And so, you know, I'm for you guys. I just want to hope and kind of ask is next year when we're probably going to have these same conversations again. What do you think?
Not if I can help it.
You're right. So what is the very necessary next step?
I'm sorry, we got 94 people in this chat. I mean, it's not just us four right here. This obviously is an issue that a lot of people care about. And so, you know, starting tomorrow, we should each commit to doing something. You know, to commit to doing something. Everyone doesn't have the same means and the same resources, but commit to doing something. I wanted to ask Casey, because she mentioned these groups that have funding. Is there oversight for those groups that you're working with to make sure that this funding gets to the right places?
No. So, and that's the issue and the problem. Let me make this short for you. So the short answer is that the philanthropic community in Atlanta is very convoluted. There's a lot of pass-through organizations in terms of it coming top down. And I'm not going to call any names, but again, if you know anything about the West Side, and again, I live on Lowry, you already know who the funder is that is taking over the city, over this part of the city, right? But there are a lot of pass-through grants and organizations that by the time it gets to someone like me, there's no money left, right? Or the fact that you have to be invited to the table to even apply for some of these grants, right? But if you're not in the room or you don't come with a referral, then your proposal and your initiative isn't even heard. And so that's why a lot of our funding is grassroots. It's people sending in $5, $20 almost every single day to help keep us afloat, because we can't get to the Chick-fil-A money, the blank money, the Coke money, the Delta money, right? We can't get to this money because we're not in the room, and it's such a tight-knit community. And let's not add on the fact that usually Black-led and Black woman-led organizations are the least funded in this city. This thing is so convoluted that by the time I even begin to think about trying to get the $300,000 that I need to really get this business incubator off the ground in the way, or let's talk about the fact I'm still doing programming in my garage because I don't have a building, right? So I can't get to the funding to do what I really need to do in a way that keeps everybody safe, because I'm low man on the totem pole. I'm a Black woman, let's just call it what it is, leading an organization with some knuckleheads that nobody want to really be involved with. And it's like, get it how you live. but then you want me to help solve the problem, but then you don't give me the money, because wanting good costs nothing, doing good costs everything. And doing good is manufacture, and to manufacture anything, you gotta pay. And until these people start getting the money to grassroots organizations, we are going to have this conversation next year.
Right.
What can we do to change that narrative? I like solutions, you know. What can we do to change that narrative? What tools do you need to get to those individuals to make sure that the money's not being squandered, and make sure that it gets to the proper, you know, through the proper channels? What can we do?
We can continue to lift up conversations like this. I think while we have to address the problem, we have to also spend more time talking about there's a solution and then naming the solution. In addition to that, it's really important for people who have these inroads to make these not just warm connections, but hot connections. Meaning, look, you say you want to do something, you Black Lives Matter, you down for the cause, you want to make an impact. This is where you put your money. And a lot of times we don't have that level of assertiveness with people we know that can cut the checks, because we want to keep our relationships, you know, nice and friendly and light with them. But it's time for us to start calling people on their stuff and holding them accountable. So address the issue, talk more about the solution, mention the organizations that are bringing the solutions to the table, but then reaching out to your network and saying, look, this is where this connection has to happen. In addition to that, more stories like Canopy, highlighting the solution that is happening, making sure that people understand where the money goes. Then it's my job as an organization to make sure that you know what's happening, that you can see the impact that is being made. You can see the change that is happening in these young men, where we started from point A and now we're at point F. And I can tell you all day, I got tons of data and white papers and videos, and it's just a matter of getting the door open. So repost, reshare, highlight us. It's not just Hey that's doing this work. My brother Sean Walton over near Westview. We got Chuck Barlow, another MBC alumni, working with Saucy. We got people on the ground that high level folks will never know their names, because those people in the middle never talk about us.
Right. I have a question from the chat real quick. If you guys have a little more time, some folks wanted to get one more question in, which was, you know, do you feel like the water boys are a symptom of, and I think we've addressed this in certain ways, but just to get into more, do you feel like what's going on with the water boys is part of a greater structural issue with the city of Atlanta?
Yes.
Well, with the nation, not just the city of Atlanta. We have, you know, there's some people that talk about, you know, the reset. You know, economics right now are at an all-time low. What happens in January is going to be critical. It's going to be critical because they're expecting at least 25-30% of businesses to close. Okay, so that's not just going to have an impact on the children. It's having an impact on their parents. It's having an impact on community. Yeah, that's what you get. You get people that are running out of options. They're running out of options. And we're just talking about the children that are kind enough to provide us with water at the corners. We're not even talking about the kids that will rob you, you know, in 5 minutes because they have nothing to eat. And, you know, you start hearing that frequencies of gunshots and things of that nature. If we don't get it together and start coming with some solutions, we're going to be facing some real problems in the very near future. Some real problems. So this is just the beginning. These kids selling water is just the beginning. And I've seen upwards of 15, 20 kids out on the corner. They can't all, you know, serve that corner. So we really need to do, like the gentleman said, we need more action like KT's doing, and we need to be in these streets and trying to figure out some alternatives to provide some economic comfort for what's up ahead.
You know, it's funny. I was talking with I got a homeboy. Piedmont Driving Club. So it's, you know, it's a country club in the city. And we were talking about marijuana legalization and like the stuff in Denver, like the, you know, where they have legalized it. And I'm interested in the way Chicago is handling things, but just knowing Atlanta, like we're not even nowhere near ready for that type of lifestyle and culture to be here. Like those of us that partake think we are, but we not. Because if you think the Water Boys is something, like open some dispensaries and like make marijuana legal in Atlanta, then you ain't seen, but it's only because we ain't figured out this piece right here though. Like that's why. So you can't, Black people already getting left out of the marijuana space, right? Which is unfortunate. You see what I'm saying? We're gonna lose out. We were slaves during the tobacco, slaves during the oil. You see what I'm saying? So I need to get in on marijuana. We're gonna miss out on that, but you can't, if you can't figure out the water selling piece, right? Then you can't sell out. It's gonna be tough to figure out the other piece, right? There's levels to all of this. And so the world is moving in a particular direction, and Atlanta is sitting on a bunch of young Nipseys. And if everybody was Nipsey this, he was given the formula, you know what I'm saying? But I'm assuming Invest Atlanta and the Negro mayors, as we were saying in the chat room, I guess they don't listen to Nipsey. You know what I'm saying? But the funny thing is, it's just that Atlanta, unlike the country still plays on a black and white narrative, and Atlanta is like an onion. The moment you blame a white person, and please believe it's a white person around somewhere, but Atlanta can't have it both ways. You can't be like, well, we so black, but then something go wrong and you immediately blame the white man. It's like either you got power or you don't. And the state is what it is, but it's just levels to all of this. And I still ride MARTA. So what I realize is that this ain't New York, and that the way we use public transportation, it's like a classism thing here where, you know, in New York it's used differently. And so once you start to experience Atlanta consistently through a car window, you start to lose, unfortunately. Not, and I know you don't want to, you just start to lose different aspects of connect what's really going on because of the amount of time in your car. You know what I'm saying? It's just tough. So we have to get out and walk and experience the city more, and you approach things differently from that manner.
Right. Well, I have to close this out here, guys, because we have reached our stream limit. This conversation has been exceeded our expectations in length and our audience here. So I really want to thank all of our panelists, Casey Vennon, Mr. Adasa, and Bame, and as well as Abubakar for coming on earlier and sharing with us. You know, this has been super important. I think the conversation that needs to continue to go on. And it might just be me left.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to, all of the Canopy Atlanta team behind the scenes who has continued to support us in making this this moment, this issue, this conversation what it is and what it has been. If you like Canopy Atlanta stories and conversations like this, and want to see us bring this model to more communities, I would ask that you please consider supporting us. From now until the end of the year, December 31st, Newsmatch will double your donations to Canopy Atlanta. I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now. But again, we just want to thank everybody for their support and really continuing to invest in this dialogue. Like for us as Canopy Atlanta, we're not trying to necessarily pick a side. We're not trying to really force a solution. But for us, we really want to provide a platform for the community to be able to come together to have these kind of conversations where all of the sides, hopefully get heard, and then we can move in some sort of integrated way forward. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you again. Gavin, as the editor for this issue and the writer for this story on the Water Boys, is any last words as we wrap up this evening?
All I want to say is, this story, this event, none of it could have been possible without the community and this audience and people who care about these stories and these issues. So continue to just reach out to Canopy staff. We can't tell these stories without your involvement. So please make your voices heard. All
right. Well, thank you to everyone who joined this broadcast for your time this evening, all the panelists again. We really appreciate all of your comments. The chat, area was very lively. So we thank you for all of your energy and your passion. And we hope that you continue to support Canopy Atlanta as we go forward. So thank you again. Have a good night.